Welcome to the Lady Up America podcast. I'm Diane Canada, and I am so glad you're here. Thanks for tuning in. Today, ladies, this is a special bonus episode. I wanted to feature my good friend Eva Angelina today because there is such a wealth of wisdom that she brings to conversation that I didn't want to sandwich in between the normal format of my podcast. I wanted to really feature her and spotlight her because I think you're going to glean a lot of wisdom from her. She and I have just so much common ground in a lot of the way that we grew up. She's currently running for Tennessee State House of Representatives. She came out of, she was really a phoenix, really rose from a lot of very difficult circumstances growing up. And she went on to be an incredible achiever in this world. She's currently a CEO and entrepreneur. She is the TV host of the show, The American Dream, Selling Nashville. You may have seen that. She's also the founding broker at Century 21 Capital Properties. And she and her husband own the Solace Implant Center and Oral Surgery here in Nashville, Tennessee. But what I really want you to hear from her today is not her accomplishments, but her heart and what she brings to this Holy Week. So please welcome to the show, Eva Angelina Romero. Hi, Eva.
Hi. It's so good to see you, my friend. I just love. And you know, it's Easter week. And I just thought about right now, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I know it was this weekend, but I'm like, I'm living that crazy morning today. And I'm so happy to have you on the show. How special, especially that it's that week. Because like you say, it's like the journey has been an incredible one so far. Mm-hmm. One of God's faithfulness, God's love, and wow, how special. Thank you for having me today.
You are so welcome. Thanks for coming on and spending some time with me. You know, I think this Holy Week, Jesus exemplifies redemption. You know, he exemplifies the pain being worth it and redeeming us to God. So what better time than to really dive into your story and really that redemptive quality, you know, that God has brought to your life. You know, there's so many places that we could start. Let's just start at the beginning. Let's just start with this incredible story you have from childhood. Share with the ladies what a day in the life of Eva Angelina was like.
Looking back, and I say this a lot, when I think Diane of me being a child, there is a lot of moments that are super uncomfortable to talk about because I didn't have a very healthy, normal childhood, right? I grew up, and it's almost like when I share my story, I tell people I find a lot of strength in the story because it's when I'm sharing the story, I feel like I'm talking about a completely different person.
I get that.
I don't know if it's like, I can't believe that was me.
No, I totally get that.
And when I was going through my healing process with a therapist, she actually asked me to have a picture of me as a child and look at the child because I didn't. The trauma was so deep. So, you know, my mom came to this country for the American dream, for a better future. My grandfather was a farmer in Northern California, and my mom was one of 8 and 4 females. And she really, really wanted to leave a small town where she knew there was no future. She would tell me stories like she wasn't allowed to go to school. You know, she was supposed to just be a mom, and there was no future for her, but she would see the light of my grandfather coming back and talking about America and all these things. So my grandfather folded and brought her to the States as the oldest female in the family. And but he wasn't around. And so she grew up, was around family. Very quickly at about 16, my mom met my father. Mm-hmm. Also working in a factory. She started working in a factory while my grandfather was in the farms. And she would tell me stories of, she just wanted to work, right? She just wanted to work, have funds to send back to my grandmother and siblings as the oldest. But she ended up staying here. She ended up meeting my father when she was about 16, had her first child at 17. Mm-hmm. Know a word of English, started working in a factory, and unfortunately that was not a good relationship. come to find out, my mother found out he had another family. She was with a child and then got pregnant with me right away. So my sister and I are about 10 months apart. 18, two babies, and she would tell me stories. She didn't know how she was going to make it, especially because my father was very abusive. My father, at a young age, he had probably a lot of trauma himself. I it was just, but one of the things I do remember, my mother was a woman of faith. She was born and raised Catholic, and she would teach me, the Word of God the way she knew, having a relationship with God the way she knew about Christ and the faith she was taught. But always, I remember that. But it was very hard because growing up, all I remember was hardship. Even though she told me the stories, I was too young to remember. But when I had a sense of what was going on in the home, it was trauma. My father was physically abusive to my mother most of our early childhood. And then he was also abusive to us, not only physical, but also sexual abuse. That's something that I had to live with, and I didn't know. It was about, but even all the trauma, all the things that were going on, my mom trying to survive this relationship, staying with him, having children, trying to have a voice in her marriage. One of the things I do remember, or in her relationship, is her faith. That was like her saving grace. She would go to mass. She even taught classes. But I knew of God, but I didn't have a relationship with God. It wasn't until I was about 16, 17. And the reason why, my friend, is because when we were living in that, I don't know even what to call it, just dark place. It was a dark place as a kid. You think everybody's life is like that. You don't know anything different, right? So that's kind of how you live. There's violence. We grew up in a city, in a big city where there was a lot of stuff going on outdoors. Like, we were allowed to go play, but then you had to come back before dark because there was prostitution, there was drugs, there was gun, there was all the things. So, what ended up happening was when my sister and I were in elementary school, it was about, I don't know, I remember it was fifth grade. The whole abuse came out. And I remember my father went to prison. We went through the whole legal system, all the things. But then I had just turned 13 and I was still going through the court system. It was not fun.
Hold on one sec. So he was going to jail because of the abuse?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, my mother reported him. One of the things that I will say, my mother loved this country. My mother did everything possible to abide by the law, to do the things she could, to make sure she did everything the right way.
Yeah.
That was just my mom, right? But so when she found out about the sexual abuse, she did call the police. That's what she knew how to do. And then all the stuff started coming afterwards. That story in itself was, anybody that has gone through that type of trauma and dealing with the legal system, my heart goes out to them, because back then it's just a lot of things a child has to go through, and reliving things and having, my father was in prison, and we had to just face that. But it was something that a child doesn't really understand. Diane, abuse is one of those things. Kids are so innocent. They don't really get what's going on. It's like your parent. They're supposed to be your caregiver. They're supposed to be the good guy, but now they're not the good guy.
Yeah.
Like, it's really, really hard to navigate that. But my mom always tried to do the right thing. So he did end up going to prison. That was a couple of years of in the making. But during that time, my mom felt it would be best for me to be legally married. There was a family friend that had been coming around, and I had just turned 13, and I'm going to speed up the story, but long story short, my mom thought it would best I would marry him legally, which ended up being my husband. I had just turned 14. January 23rd, 1993.
Wow.
At the age of 14, I was married to my first husband.
Mm.
He was 22 years older than me. He was about 26. I think I did the math, but I think it's 12 years older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And in my mind, I've been very grateful to share my story and say I was able to heal the relationship with my mother when she passed, because she has now passed, regarding all this stuff that happened in my life. Because my mother ended up going back with my father, ended up having another child and all the things after he got out of prison. But I think marriage, me being a young bride at that age, I felt my mom felt I would be safer with someone else,
Mm-hmm.
me staying in the home, because my mom was still very tied to the chains of this man. It was terrible. It was terrible. She didn't know anything else.
Yeah, she was trying to, almost like, remember that song Reba McEntire did, Fancy? It was almost like that. I mean, obviously she wasn't encouraging you to go into prostitution, but you know what I mean? Like the desperate things that mothers will do to try to protect their daughters or send them out of a dangerous or a very bad situation. They think they're doing the right thing.
Yeah. And that's what when I would talk to her about it, I said, how could you marry me, Mom? I was only, I couldn't even drive. I was in middle school.
Yeah.
I was in middle school in LA. It was so strange. People would ask me, your husband, you're married? Like they thought something was wrong. They thought I was from another planet.
Yeah.
That
is just crazy. Yeah.
It was in the state of Nevada, which was legal at the time with parental consent. It was legal. And people don't know that child marriage is a thing still, Diane, still in some states.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. And it depends on how you define, some states, I think in California at that age, it was 16 with parental consent. But because I was too young, Nevada was a state that allowed it. So they went to Nevada and my mom went with, and for years I held to so much pain because she had done that. I didn't want to get married. I didn't even know what that meant.
Yeah.
I didn't know anything. I was just like, what?
Yeah.
But she was hardcore wanting to follow the rules of law. And in her mind, it was a way she would tell me stories. It's a way that she felt she was protecting me because my father was still very much injected in the family, even though he was in prison.
Wow.
He would call, it was just, she wasn't able to leave that chain. And in her mind, her, as a Catholic, she really thought she was doing the right thing to stick with him, even though he had done this, which was terrible. And she knew it was terrible, but she's like, it was just pull, and the family, the entire family was okay with it, which was really, really strange for me.
Yeah.
As a child, I thought I grew up, feeling unseen for most of my childhood, like really unseen. Like, I don't know. I always try to picture this child being like, wait, this bad person went to prison and everybody else is advocating for him. But yet this child, so it was confused. Like the police is supposed to protect you. These people are protecting you, but then these people think he's okay. So it's like, you're just like, whoa. So the way of my development happened as a child was very interesting. It was a lot of work I had to do to really understand what was okay and what wasn't okay for a long time, and what is normal or what is, but it was just, that's my background. I grew up in survival mode most of my life as a young girl. Me and my older sister, my sister had a different turnout. She ended up getting into gangs, into just a bad place, in and out of shelters most of her life. She's my older, 10 months apart. But she was also a victim of that cycle. It wasn't until I turned 17, I was already married because I was 14 when I was legally married to my first husband. My uncle, which happens to be a man of God, and to this day, he's like my father figure. I love him dearly. He's still in the ministry. He was a Pentecostal pastor at the time, and he would invite me to church, and he knew my past, and he knew, because I was going through some deep, deep depression.
Of course.
I cried, didn't know what was going on. You have this person telling you what to do, what not to do. Another thing is, even though I was married, I wasn't allowed to do a lot of things, because he had his way of thinking. and I had to obey, right? I had to do whatever I had to do. So then it wasn't until I got pregnant with my first daughter at 16 and I knew that I had life in me, that my life kind of, it really gave me a different just perspective. But it really was that moment. I'm never going to forget. My uncle invited me to church. He would always invite me. And I just was going through so much internally, through depression, crying, all the things. I didn't know that that was depression. I just knew that I was sad.
Mm-hmm.
And then I remember going to church and seeing these people super happy, and crying, and the all the Holy Ghost, like everything. And I'm like, wow, these people. And my uncle came to pray for me. He would always pray for me. I would try to go every Sunday. I felt good going to church.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up as a Catholic, where you go in, every Sunday to mass, and then you go to the priest. I didn't really understand that the relationship with my creator. It was more with, this person, and these are the things you do. Very different. So when my uncle would pray for me, I felt so much peace.
Mm-hmm.
But there was one time I went to the service and it changed my life. I was probably 17, 18. I don't remember. I know I was probably 18 because my baby was a baby. And I cried helplessly. Like, I was just praying in the altar. And I said, God, if you are real, if this is real, this joy that I feel, I need to feel your presence, because I don't know why I'm so sad. And anyway, that changed my life. I literally felt the Holy Spirit come through my body. I felt this warmth, this healing, this incredible experience. It changed my life.
Mm-hmm.
I became a born again Christian at about, I was probably 18. And I served in the church for about 12 years until I separated and left that relationship for many, many reasons. Even though I was a believer and I believed in Christ, it was a little bit of a legalistic church where I also didn't have a voice. I also there's too many rules within the church where I couldn't do certain things. But still, it gave me that's how I found Christ. It is what it is. That was where I started my relationship with Christ. But you learn so much from that. And talk about healing, man. It took years for me to heal. And that's another thing the church, would teach me. The church would teach forgive.
Yeah.
So as a Christian, and I'm talking about this, the ideology in this particular denomination was like, you forgive and you forget. Which I'm like, wait, so I'm supposed to forgive my father and all these people that have hurt me, even my mother, I had resented her, but then you just have to let it go. That was the way they dealt with healing and forgiveness. And I had to learn what that looked like for me, because I needed to process all of this.
Yes, there's a processing. You don't skip the process part. Eventually, you learn to let it go. I used to hate that when I was coming up after going through a lot of trauma and stuff too, when people would just say, just get over it. Just get over it. And I'm like, how do you get over it? Like, how do you do that? And it took me well into my adulthood to learn how to do that. It's not, I think for women too, it's harder because those emotional attachments that we have, and there's soul attachments and things like that we have to learn how to work through. It's not so simple as just forgive and forget. Question before we go on, how did your grandfather feel about the wedding?
So my grandfather had already passed.
Oh, okay.
He passed right before I was probably around 7 or 8 when he passed. My mother was in the States. I remember at that time, my mom was working on her legal citizenship, and she could not travel, and she was devastated. And he passed in Mexico while she was still here. And I remember by the time I was too young. The trauma didn't come out until I was about in 5th grade. So he was already gone. But the family was divided. I think my mom, she had her point of view, and, and I get it now. Back then I didn't. I think I resented her and I was upset at her for many reasons. And didn't understand where she was coming from. And, but, I think it was her way of keeping me safe from, just things. And her and I lived, even though when my father got out of prison and she still had a relationship, we had a very, very, tough relationship, very tough. But I kept growing, from her. But
I can see where if her father had passed and she felt like there was no male figure to protect,
yeah,
again, not, I hate what happened to you. And I can only imagine, I can only imagine
yeah,
the confusion and the
mm,
sadness and the feeling of the loss of innocence and all of those things that you felt, that
yeah,
being unseen, all of that. Um, I'm not condoning what she did,
yeah,
but you can look and you can kind of
yeah.
understand it. She was just doing
Hmm.
the best she could with what she knew at the time. And unfortunately, there's a lot of casualties to that when we don't have strong families. We don't have strong relationship with Jesus. We're sort of winging it, in
Yeah.
life. People are winging it. They're doing the best they can.
Mhm.
Gosh, it. I was married I left home at 17, was married at 18, and had a child at 19.
Yeah.
So, like I was saying before, for those ladies listening, that there's a lot of
Mhm.
similarities, a lot
Yeah.
of abuse, and all of that too. So,
Yeah.
it's interesting to me though, as we kind of fast forward into
Mhm.
more modern times. What is it that you think is the difference, Eva, to people who are crippled by their trauma versus people who are, it's almost like an accelerant. It's almost like you know, it pushes them into their purpose.
Mhm.
Because I know you and I both found Christ in our teens, like I was starting to come to him. I felt
Yeah.
that warm feeling. I felt like it was like warm water running through me when I prayed, when I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
at my deepest, darkest. And then I had another encounter with him in my early 20s where I really fully surrendered to him. So
Mhm.
I think it's probably that's the difference, is when if Jesus enters versus someone
Mhm.
who is continuing to wing it in their own life without him. Would you agree, or do you think there's some indicator that you've seen, witnessed in women that are crippled by their pain and trauma versus women who are accelerated by it?
Of course. And you know what's crazy, Diane? That there's a lot of women that are believers that are still crippled by pain that I know.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
That's
It's true.
that's that's very unfortunate because that's not what Christ teaches us. That's not how I feel. That's not hasn't been my experience. Now let's fast forward to your point. Did I live with victimization for a while? Absolutely.
Yeah, and I did too.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
I think
Yep.
that is part of the journey,
Process.
maybe
Yeah, it's the
the
process.
grieving part of it, the
Mhm.
process. Thank you, the process, because there is something beautiful about that process that I think we need to
Yeah,
remember. Like
yeah,
I remember my therapist saying two things to me that were like, "Oh my gosh, you're right." That's probably what did it. One thing is she said she validated me. She was the
yeah.
first person in my entire I was probably 27 when I saw her. I was
Mhm.
a young, like not so young, but she was the first thing person that I think really listened and saw the pain and
Mhm.
validated it and
Yeah.
said, "I understand." But she also said, "I understand and what's going to happen next."
That's good.
Like she said, "We can sit here and feel sorry
Mhm.
and validate and let's grieve it. Let's get through it. Let's process it.
Mhm.
But you do know that there is a story after this. And
Yes.
what is that going to look
Oh,
like?"
that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think too, you had a beautiful therapist. Uh, there are people who don't. There are a lot of therapists who lead people wrong, and they end up. Oh my gosh,
Okay.
they end up going through so much more trauma. When you just said that, it made me think of something. I want to show you something.
Show me. Show me what it is.
Do you remember this doll,
Oh,
Mrs. Beasley? Okay, this was my childhood doll that my grandmother had given me. And this is a replica. The original I had lost, but God love her hair.
look at the
Uh,
hair.
but this was Mrs. Beasley, and I took this doll everywhere I went. I mean, this was like my security blanket for so many years.
Mm.
And what was so interesting is when I got into therapy, and God led me to a wonderful therapist. Her name was Mrs. Beasley,
Oh,
and same
yeah.
thing. She was a strong Christian woman, and she
Mhm.
led me through EMDR therapy, all these things. But same thing. She's like, we get to tell the story of how this
Mhm.
ends.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, it was a crappy beginning, but that doesn't have to be the end. You know,
Exactly.
and you know what else she did, Eva? Is she drew for ladies listening who've been through similar stories to us. She
Mhm.
had a big whiteboard, and she drew a line down the center of it. And on the left, she said, I want you to name for me all the things that a child should expect from their parents.
Mm-hmm.
And, I would, of course, put, well, they should feed you. They should, buy clothes. They should, I ran out of things about, 3 or 4 down the list, maybe 5 I could think of. That was all I could think of. And she just started to tear up, and she said, let me tell you what a child should have in a healthy home. And on the right side, she started listing. I mean, she just kept listing and listing and listing things. And I was dumbfounded. You should feel like you belong. You should feel safe. You should feel cared for. You should feel supported, all these things. And I just bawled like a baby crying, because these are the things when we come up in trauma, we don't realize that this is what it's supposed to look like.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't know what you don't know. I mean, you don't know, but to your point, I love that story. I'm happy. Thank you for sharing that. Because I think that is, we experience trauma. You have your trauma, I have my trauma. And there's so many women that have that looks different. Right. But I think that is very helpful to when your therapist did that. I was very lucky too to find a therapist that's so long, because the church was anti-therapy.
Yeah.
That church I belonged to, unless it was very rigid. And it was hard to find somebody that I could finally found somebody, thank God. But she was incredible, was my therapist for so many years. And as I processed all this, that was the thing. She was very good at understanding. Let me show you, because I didn't know. I thought that was like to your point. These are the things I think my mom was supposed to do, and these are the things all the things. And then when you start looking at this, it's you awake, you awaken, So, and I do remember. I think when I went through the process, there was a grieving part, oh my gosh. And then I felt different. I felt like, this is not fair. Why me? I did go through that. Why me? Why am I supposed to be different? Why do I have to have all this pain? And then there was a time even that I said, God, I've been through so much pain. I don't need any more pain.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Then I already paid my dues. No more pain. And then, well, there's this other thing you're going to go through. And yeah, it doesn't, I think I learned that there was no way I could be the person I am today if I had not gone through the things I went through. There's no way. And do I want, I have a deep heart for people that go through sexual trauma, any type of trauma, especially as a young child, but children in specific, because I think it does change the way they view the world. It takes years for them to see things in a way that is considered, even statistically, if you look at statistics that kids have been through that kind of trauma, very few survive and are healthy in many ways. It takes a lot. But I do think that there's hope, good people. And I do think that God leads us in a path. I look back and I'm like, I've learned so much about myself, but also about other people. And through this journey, I learned what forgiveness really looks like, especially for someone that I love, like my mom. As far as my father, I still forgive him, right? Do I have a relationship with him? No. Do I know his life? No, I don't know. I know he was legally deported from this country and he's gone. And years have been, but I wish him the best. I think he has his own trauma and he had to, he relived whatever. And I do think there's cycles. These are cycles that last generations when they're not broken. I'm very fortunate that I found my faith and I was seen by my creator. I've always been seen, but I discovered that I had a greater purpose than that pain. Because living in that pain will paralyze you, Diane. Paralyze you. It doesn't benefit, you can be mad and upset and that's all okay, but you got to get out of there and grow from that and know that God has something greater than that pain, that situation, and I am so grateful that I was able to heal, because some people haven't had that opportunity or still live in that pain and that space of unhappiness or grief.
I've learned
years.
Yeah. It's almost like it becomes a part of them that they almost wear like a badge.
Yes.
There's a, you know, I had in another life, I was a professional songwriter, and I had this song that, where one of the lines in it was talking about, it's one thing to feel blues for a while. It's one thing to kind of feel blue, like feel the blues, but it's another
Mhm.
thing to learn to wear them up under your smile.
Mm,
And, but that's the point, is you are smiling, you are looking for the good. I think all of these things stay with you, but we get to choose how we, again, process it, how we let it
yeah.
fuel us versus cripple us.
Oh, yeah.
And this is the part that's been so interesting. As I've walked with God, I've seen suffering is very necessary in the world. Like, as human beings, if we've
Agree.
just got it all good, if we're living on easy street, we don't run to him. We don't get to know the heart of the Father. It's when we're on our knees. It's when we're crippled. It's when when we know there is no other option. We run to him. Recently, speaking of songs, recently I wrote one, and I haven't recorded it yet, but it's called "Most of Us Meet Jesus in the Valley."
Ah, I love that.
And the idea of that is what we're talking about, that when we come to the end of ourselves, that's where we find him. It's when we really start to understand him. Then he lifts our head and he pulls us up and he says, okay, now let me show you what all that suffering was for. And he starts to reveal layer by layer the purpose in that pain. He can
Yeah.
turn that pain into great purpose, just like on
Yeah.
the cross.
Mhm.
We look at the
Mhm.
cross this Holy Week and we see the beatings and we see the crucifixion and all that. And he's saying, no, look to Sunday. Look what the point of all that pain was. And I think if there's any message I would want women to just hear over and over again through our show today, it's that pain is not the end of it. The suffering is not the end of it. Sunday's coming. you
Oh,
know,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
yeah,
It's coming. And
it's
I think God, in all this journey, that for me was the biggest, like, whoa, this is what God, my transformation. You mentioned a phoenix earlier today,
yeah,
and I really see that I came from the ashes. God got me out and said, but when you're in the pain, you do wonder, like, what really?
yeah,
Like, what does this all mean? I mean, and then I went through that was, the trauma that I went there. But then after, when I divorced my ex-husband, I divorced, it was a lot of infidelity on his part. It was a lot that I had to deal with then. And I'm like, really? I have to deal with this
I know,
again?
right? It's like the
It's
hits
like,
just keep on coming.
yeah, it's like, wait, God, wait. And then you deal with that, with lack of trust, somebody you trusted with you pretty much your entire life. And he was a minister as well. So then you
Mm.
deal with that. And then you're like, he- you know,
The
so
church
yeah,
hurt.
and then the depression settles again. You're like, well, and then for a while there, I felt like I left my faith. It was probably a couple of years until I'm like, because I was devastated. You think that you can figure it out, and then to your point is you're back on your knees.
Yeah, and especially when it's someone in the church that hurts you. For you, that was your husband. For me, growing up, my father was a pastor, and left us when I was 8 for another woman. So
Yeah,
when people say they have the church hurt, we get that. You and I
yeah,
get that. The
yeah,
people that promised to love us and protect us and care for us were the very people who hurt us. You know,
yeah.
but what I had to come to understand about that, and I know you did too, is that people hurt people, but that God didn't do that. That's not a mark against God. That just shows again the frailty and humanity. People will let us down,
Oh yeah.
but going to God, that's where the healing is. You don't turn away from him in your darkest moments. You run to him.
To him. And you know what? As I transition into, God has been so gracious to me and just shown me his light every minute that I said, yes, God, show me. Yes, God, show
Yes. Yes.
me.
More of that, please.
More of that, please. Just more of that,
Yeah.
because the world is chaotic. The world we live in right now can be, you know, there is no, I don't think until we go to Him in our last days, there is no, oh, I'm done. There's no,
Right.
I'm done.
That's right. That's right.
I think it's important to note that things might be okay, great, but you have your children are growing up,
Mhm.
grandchildren. There's always going to be something that will push us or, challenge us, or there's always going to be something.
Mm-hmm.
And I just don't know what I would do if I did not have him in my life.
Oh, I know. I agree. I don't know how anyone navigates this world without him. I wouldn't want to find out. It, even with him, it's confusing enough. We can rest in him. We don't have to have all the answers. We just know the one who does. Even in that, there can be anxiety if you're not careful, but to try to navigate it without him, without the rock. I mean, this whole world is sinking sand. I believe with all my heart we're in the last days. I think that it's literally the last minutes of the last days. None of us know the time. I don't ever try to predict dates or anything like that. But I'm looking at the sky every day because all of the prophecy is unfolding right in front of us. And I feel this urgency to just try and be out here as much as we can, trying to win as many people as we can. He could come back tonight. He could come back 100 years from now. We don't know. So we need to be on the field, continuing to occupy for him and to try and win people to him. But if we're wounded warriors on this battlefield, I say this all the time, we're not near as effective as when we let him heal us. And then we can face this. We can face whatever comes. We can not only face it, but face it with confidence, knowing our confidence is in him. It's nothing we can do. But this is a dark, dark place. Now you're stepping into what I call the lion's den of politics. So you haven't had enough. You're just a glutton, Eva. That's what it is.
So to your point, friend, I remember 2 years ago when Governor Lee appointed me to a commission. I was like, wow, how did I, this little girl, that felt unseen for so long, have such the honor to be? I mean, I've been placed in so many special places in my world. When I told God, yes, I'm in, my doors started opening. When I started letting the pain and growing and knowing that this is going to be, I said, yes, let's go. And you start growing and building, and God starts blessing you and bringing the right people in your life. And, and that's the purpose, right? Like, what is the purpose of all this? Well, there's a greater purpose. It's not about me. It's not about me, Diane. It's not about my past. My past didn't define me. It made me, and God is creating this incredible story that doesn't have to end the way that it started, right? So I think that I knew politics was going to be maybe something I do, maybe, and it started actually. That thought really started with my appointment with Governor Lee to this, and me doing a lot of grassroots. I've been doing a lot on the macro level in Tennessee. Really, when I came here with my husband, I really started it just being in the community, different events, and a lot of it was because we were new here. We didn't know anybody, and we love to serve. My husband and I, because of our background, have always felt the desire to give back. Because along the way, Diane, I did not make myself. It wasn't like a self-made type situation. I had people that brought me, gave me a hand. How can I help? I call them my angels in my world that really saw something that I didn't see for myself, right? So all these people, same happened here, you start connecting. So I feel I want to be the same for other people. So we start connecting, nonprofits, work we do. And I knew someday this would come. I just didn't know if the timing was the right time. Because, you always think you have this idea. It's like you plan for a kid. You're like, maybe I'll have a baby here. And then it's like, well, maybe now. It was pregnancy, they say. But it was one of those things that somebody tapped me on the shoulder a couple of months ago. This house seat that I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't think. I thought I would maybe city council, maybe a school board seat.
No.
Oh no,
deeper pool.
No, that's what I was literally. Someday maybe I'll do that, and then here we are, and wow, it was January, early January or end of January when I said, let's go. And let me tell you, the moment I said, let's go, God, obviously I prayed for it. I was fasting. I'm like, God, is it really? Like, I literally said that to myself right now.
Yeah.
It just felt very uncomfortable, to be honest. I don't know if you felt the same way when you did it. Did
So
you feel
uncomfortable. Like, yeah, when God started calling me to it, I spent I didn't have like the certainty a year out, but as that year started working through, the certainty became more and more clear. But I'd worked through it with a life coach, a woman named Grace that I just would go to when I had really tough decisions to make. She was a Christian and she would help me work through it and make sure that I was thinking about it in a healthy way. And we would pray together on it. And I knew that's what God was calling me to do. The night before I pulled my papers, Eva, I was sick to my stomach. I was up and down sick all night. I'm like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I was terrified.
Yeah.
And I got on the phone with her the next morning and she's like, just rolling her eyes. She's like, Diane, we've been through this for a year. This is what God's calling you to do. What is your big problem? And I said, I just feel like I'm going into the lion's den.
Yeah.
And she literally like busted out laughing. She said, oh, you are. And I'm like, thanks. And then she said, what changed everything for me? She said, well, how did that work out for Daniel? And I said, you're right. And I sucked it up. I laid it up at that point. I'm like, you're right. You won't hear any more complaint out of me. And I went all in. I'm like, if this is what he's calling me to do, this is what I'll do. Then it was in 2020. COVID broke out. BLM riots. It was like the most tumultuous. It was like, it's already going to be hard enough. And now we have all this, Lord.
Yeah.
That's why I laugh, because it's deeper and deeper ends of the pool that he brings us into. But he's prepared us. I think when you go through the kinds of things like you and I have gone through, and so many women that are watching that have had tumultuous childhoods, that have been through very, very difficult things, it builds a fortitude. It builds a perseverance in us that is not normal. The normal average person living a charmed life does not have. And we can run to those battle lines. I mean, look at David, the heart of David running to that battle line with Goliath, while all the Chicken Littles, standing there for all these days, being intimidated. But he's running because we know it's not us that's going to take that giant down. It's God. We understand where our strength and our power comes from. It's not in us. We're no match for the enemy. But when we come with the armies of God, when we come with the word of God, I'm so grateful for people like Grace and beautiful voices in my life like yours that remind us of these things. And this is what I wanted to do this week, was remind women where our power comes from in this Holy Week. This cross, that we operate from a place of victory, not defeat. I needed that reminder today. I don't know about you, but I know there are women listening who need that today. We've got to encourage each other. We've got to remind each other. But yeah, it's hard. What you're doing is incredibly hard, to raise your hand and say, God, send me. And you're running to that political battle line, knowing you're running into that den of lions, knowing that you're running into evil itself, because the enemy operates in that space so pervasively. And you are going into it, bringing that strength and that character and that light of God. You're going to help push that evil out. A lot of people won't run because they'll say, I don't want any part of that. I don't want to go into that. But if the light doesn't go into the dark, how is that dark ever going to get pushed back?
Yeah. I love that. You said so many beautiful things. One, just it's not me. It's going to be God with me, with me. And because when I was started this journey, I'm like, wow, this is a lot. This is a lot. I talked to my husband first. I wanted to make sure him and I are one. I wanted to make sure he was on board, and he was very supportive from the moment. He says, you got to do this. Yeah. I'm like, really? Okay. That was the first yes. So then I started calling some friends that are, and they were very supportive, and yes. And it was a lot of yeses, almost all yes. But then my heart, just like you, I still had this inner battle within me. I was like, had my papers, everything. I couldn't sleep. I was up at 2, 3. I'm like, really? Like, why is this? Maybe this is not God. And then you go through that.
Right.
Let me look back.
Maybe I heard you wrong.
Maybe this is coming from a bad place. And then you start thinking about that. But I'm like, no, it just kept, boom, let's go. And the fear for me, my initial fear was, you are putting yourself in such a vulnerable space.
Yeah.
You're just, here I am.
Yep.
Grab me. It's like you say, like the lion's den. Go ahead, go for it.
Yep.
And I was, because of the times we're in, everything's so polarized on both sides. I feel like we're not having conversations. We're just going like this, like this,
Right.
like this. The moment you run in any party, and I'm running obviously as a Republican, right? A conservative, running as a conservative. I already knew a lot of people were going to have something to say.
Oh,
They
yeah.
weren't even going to look at me as a person. They're just like, whatever.
Yep.
Sure enough, that happened. But you know what? One of the things, somebody said to me something, and I thought, somebody asked me, how are you feeling? And I said, well, I'm feeling good. As long as I always stay true to who I am, this is not going to be difficult. If I stay grounded and know what I believe, I know what I believe, but I stay grounded, this is going to not be as hard as some might see, because I think it's easy to be pulled away and not listen to the noise, because it's really easy. You can go on social media now. I'm sure there's tons of people. I'm telling you, the moment it doesn't matter.
Yep.
They just know I've had people. So yeah, oh great, you're running. How are you running as? Like, can you look at me as a person? They just
Right.
want to know, and it's
They need the
already
label. Yep.
they need a label.
Yep.
And it's unfortunate, because then it's like you get them here. You're like, let's go for depth. Let's go to talk. No. So breaking through that is my goal. Like, we need to have conversations. We need to have these. We need to continue to just be human. Can we talk? Right. And it takes strength. And I know it's coming from God. I can't do this alone.
Yeah. The darts, my husband would tell me on social media, he'd say, don't feed the trolls. Don't get sucked into those conversations. There are I didn't know there were a lot of bots. There are a lot of paid people that are paid to come in and try to start tearing you down. But what was really hard for me coming out of the music industry, I lost a lot of my music friends that they would just say, I can't believe you're a Republican. I just can't believe you're a Republican, and so many family members. And I don't think anything prepares you for the losses of those types of relationships. Like, I had people I'd known and loved and worked with for 20 years that just walked out of my life, would say the most horrible, gut-wrenching things, but the worst part was my adult son. He was very public on Facebook about how I didn't realize we were so polar opposite on our beliefs. And he started voicing that and started being rather ugly about it. And I would beg him to stop doing it publicly. And I finally was so angry at him one day, I picked up the phone and I reprimanded him. And I said, you pick up the phone and call me like a man. We talk about it directly. Stop this public display on Facebook. And I was so angry. And I never remember being anywhere near that angry at him ever in my life, because not only could he embarrass you, and the embarrassment was not what I was concerned about. You can actually ruin the campaign, because if your opponent sees that blood in the water, a dissension with you and your child, they can take that and run with it. Yeah. And I don't think he understood the gravity of what he was doing. And I knew that God had called me to this, and I felt like he was potentially going to really harm that. But he cut off communication, and he still will not let me back in his life. And he's gotten married and didn't invite me. He's had my first granddaughter, who's 3 now, and I've yet to meet her. So that campaign costs me a lot. But I will tell you, I would do it again. And for moms listening, because there are so many moms that are listening right now whose children have disowned them over politics. Like you said, that we're not talking anymore. We're talking at each other, screaming at each other. This is epidemic. As I've been developing Lady Up America after my race, I've been speaking all over the country, and I have women coming. I tell them my story about my son, and they will come up with tears in their eyes, and they will just hug me and pray with me. And they go, me too, my son, my daughter. I mean, so much pain that this is causing in families. But what I will say to them is that we are modeling Christ more by standing in that conviction, even when it's hard, even when it costs us, because we need to show them that the commitment to Jesus, the commitment to our faith and what is right, we can't bend and compromise just to be back in relationship with them. We have to stand on what's right eventually and continue to pray for them. I pray over my son every day. I cry over him often. I miss him so much, but I pray that God will send people into his life that will open his blind eyes, help him see what's right. And I want him to come back someday and say, Mom, I understand now. and I'm so sorry. I want him to come back and say, thank you for not bending. Thank you for not compromising, because we have to look at things eternally and not just what makes us feel good right now. So standing on your convictions, being willing to take those darts, being willing to stand strong, that fortitude God's been building in you your whole life is going to carry you now.
Yeah.
So I know we have to wrap up here shortly, but what are some final thoughts that you might want to leave ladies with today?
I think, pain doesn't have to be the end of it all. It's just the beginning. You mentioned something earlier today. If we don't go through pain, it doesn't build character, right? It just doesn't build you. What you have to go through pain to understand people, to be sympathetic, compassionate, to open doors. It'll open doors for you. So it is part of the process. You are becoming. So hold on. There's more to come. There's always more to come. And God's plan is always greater than ours. It's just, we want answers all the time. We want, well, how? And it's okay not to know the answer sometimes. We have to be okay with that. And enjoy the journey. I do think happiness is a journey. It's not a destination. I have it on because it is a journey. It is a journey. You will arrive to that place God has planned for you. And then there'll be another ride.
Don't get ready for the next one. That's right. Don't get too comfy, because there'll be a deeper pool. And I always say too, there's life on the other side of your worst case scenario. There's God's waiting for you there. We want to avoid the pain, but that's not where the growth is.
I agree.
I'm so happy for you. I know that it's an ongoing process. We both are still learning and growing every day. But I hope that this has been an encouragement for women listening today, that if they're in the middle of that they can hear from two women who've walked through it too. And we can reach back and say, here's the way out, here's the way out through the maze. I wish you all the best in your race. So you're Tennessee State House. What district are you in?
State House 60. And I like to say it's Old Hickory, Hermitage, Donaldson, river to river, over 72,000 people in Davidson County. It is in Davidson County. I'm very excited. I will be out there. I'm out there already, but I definitely am very excited to represent that district. We really need a voice in Davidson County. We really do.
And please, if you're in Tennessee listening, don't write Davidson County off. Please don't write it off. Who is the opponent that you're running against? Is it the incumbent there?
Shondell Brooks is currently there. Okay. And to your point, don't write Davidson off. A lot of money comes through Davidson County. A lot of people have voices in Davidson County. We need more voices that are actually going to make a difference in this county, because so much money comes into Davidson County. A lot.
Yeah, it does.
Funding a lot of our state. We need to understand that. So I think it's important to don't write it off. Please don't. I mean, we're very fortunate to have great leaders in the state, but we need voices also in Davidson County. So we really, really hope,
What is the website people can go to if they want to learn more about you?
Thank you so much. Elect Eva Romero, ROMERO.com. ElectEvaRomero.com. Keeping it simple. I've already started my campaign. I think I launched it last week. And I can definitely do something. So I'm excited. Thank you so much.
Yes, you are so welcome. It's just always a pleasure when we get to spend time together. Thank you so much for carving out some time today for us. And I love you so much, and I'm for you. And may God bless you and keep you.
Thank you for sharing your story too. I appreciate that.
Yes, you're welcome.